Abraham, guided by an unwavering faith, answered the divine call by leaving his father's home at God's command. He took his nephew Lot with him, and their journey became a metaphor for humanity's perpetual quest for transcendent truth, in contrast to the ephemeral allurements of the material world. Abraham clung to God's promises, while Lot, dominated by his personal ambitions, chose a path oriented by selfishness and settled in Sodom. This contrast resonates deeply with Proverbs 16:25, which states, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end of it leads to death." As Lot looked out upon the rich valleys of the Jordan, he was captivated by their splendor and fertility, a vibrant reminder of the Garden of Eden. However, by settling near Sodom, a land of depravity, he illustrated Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters." This choice represented an attachment to earthly goods at the expense of spiritual values. Meanwhile, Abraham settled near the great oaks of Mamre in Hebron, where he was visited by three mysterious beings. This episode symbolizes the importance of hospitality and faith, in accordance with Hebrews 13:2. To show hospitality, do not forget, for by it some have entertained angels unawares. Recognizing the divine presence in these visitors, Abraham displayed exemplary humility and deep respect. His willingness to serve, offering water, bread, and a place to rest under a tree, exemplifies the spirit of service and generosity, consistent with Philippians 2:3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Abraham quickly prepared a generous feast, a symbol of the most precious gift of self to God, as expressed in Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it heartily, as working for the Lord and not for men. During the meal, the visitors asked Abraham about Sarah, who had announced that she would bear a son. This divine promise, despite their advanced age, reflects Luke 1:37, "For with God, nothing will be impossible." Sarah, hearing this announcement, laughed in disbelief, a deeply human response to the mystery of God's miracle. This moment is also reflected in Jeremiah 32:27. "I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me?" By questioning Sarah about her laughter, God demonstrated his infinite knowledge and reminded us that faith must transcend human limitations. As Hebrews 11:1 emphasizes, faith is the substance of things hoped for. After this announcement, the visitors stood up looking towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them. At this point, God pondered aloud, wondering whether he should reveal his plans to Abraham. This moment highlights the unique relationship between God and Abraham, an intimate communion illustrated in Genesis 12:2. "I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you." God viewed Abraham not only as a servant, but also as a friend, destined to lead a great descendant in righteousness and righteousness. By announcing that he would check the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, God demonstrated his justice and concern for humanity, in keeping with Jeremiah 23:24. "Am I not a God near, declares the Lord, and not a God far off?" Abraham, standing before the Lord, entered into a courageous dialogue, questioning whether he would destroy the righteous along with the wicked. This impassioned plea mirrors Micah 6:8. "He has shown you, O man, what is good, to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." God, in his great compassion, promised to spare the city if he found 50 righteous people there, thus demonstrating his infinite mercy and justice. This dialogue illustrates the importance of intercession and prayer. As James 5:16 reminds us, the effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Abraham, aware of his own frailty, continued to intercede persistently for Sodom, demonstrating deep faith and compassion. With each reduction in the number of righteous people needed to spare the city, God revealed his infinite patience and loving kindness, consistent with Psalm 86:15. "But you, Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in kindness and faithfulness. Abraham's persistence in this plea highlights the importance of valuing every human life, as illustrated in Matthew 18:12. The good shepherd leaves the 99 sheep to seek the one that is lost. Finally, God promised not to destroy Sodom if he found only 10 righteous people there, revealing once again his merciful nature. This commitment illustrates Ezekiel 18:23. Do I have pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that he turn from his ways and live? Ubidi. When his intercession was complete, Abraham returned to his place, having demonstrated an unwavering faith and love for divine justice. Abraham, in an act that highlights his unwavering faith and deep sense of justice, engages in dialogue with God, illustrating the quest for a balance between mercy and divine fairness. This pivotal moment mirrors Deuteronomy 32:4, which says, "He is the rock, his works are perfect, for all his ways are righteous." In sharing his intentions with Abraham, God seeks not only to inform, but also to instill a sense of justice and righteousness in his servant and his descendants, preparing them to receive his blessings. This educational process is encapsulated in Proverbs 2:9. Then you will understand justice, equity, and righteousness, every good path. Abraham's intercession for Sodom reveals his compassion and strong sense of moral responsibility. After saving its inhabitants in battle, he displays the same boldness and concern in pleading for them before God. This gesture recalls the sacrificial love spoken of in 1 John 3:16. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. We ought also to lay down our lives for the brothers. Abraham's humble boldness in negotiating for Sodom reflects the essence of faith and mercy, as highlighted in James 2:13. He who has not shown mercy will have judgment without mercy, but mercy triumphs over judgment. In contrast to Abraham's intercession, Lot's prayers are focused on his own concerns, highlighting the differences in motivations in seeking justice and divine grace. This contrast continues when Lot welcomes the angels to Sodom, demonstrating the importance of hospitality even in a corrupt environment. His act of hospitality reflects Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality, for by showing hospitality, some have entertained angels unawares. Lot offers them a meal, symbolizing generosity and hospitality, in keeping with 1 Peter 4:9. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. However, the corruption of Sodom reaches its peak when the townspeople surround Lot's house, demanding that the visitors be handed over to them. This depraved behavior illustrates Romans 1:28. And even as they did not want to have God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not fitting. Faced with this threat, Lot offers his daughters in their place, a controversial act that reflects the moral gravity of the situation. This complex dilemma is a reminder of Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. The angels then intervene to protect Lot, inflicting blindness on the attackers, demonstrating God's power and mercy, as described in Psalm 34:7. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. They warn Lot to leave the city with his family, foretelling the imminent destruction of Sodom because of its iniquity, recalling Genesis 6:13, where God also declares imminent destruction. Lot, in warning his sons-in-law, is taken lightly, a reaction that illustrates 2 Peter 3:3-4. In the last days, mockers will come with their mockery, walking after their own lusts. Despite the urgency, Lot hesitates, requiring divine intervention to guide him out of the city. This act of mercy reflects 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, but is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. The angels give him clear instruction not to look back, emphasizing the need to let go of the past in order to move forward, as in Luke 17:32. Remember Lot's wife. Lot, afraid to flee to the mountains, asks for permission to seek refuge in Zoar. a small town nearby. This request illustrates his humanity and desire for safety, even after witnessing God's mercy. It echoes Psalm 34:22. The Lord redeems the soul of his servants, and all who trust in him will not be condemned. The angels grant his request, again demonstrating God's graciousness. Their promise not to destroy Zoar until Lot did so reflects Psalm 91:11. He will give his angels charge over you, to guard you in all your ways. Lot's preference for Zoar over the mountains symbolizes times when individuals choose an easier path rather than trusting fully in God's plan. This hesitation is a reflection of Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Indeed, this choice, while human, demonstrates a partial dependence on God while emphasizing the need for complete trust in his purposes. Trusting fully in the Lord without leaning on one's own wisdom, as Proverbs 3:5 recommends, is a vital lesson learned from this episode. The story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah by fire and brimstone is a vivid testimony of God's judgment on human iniquity, echoing Jude 1:7. Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which gave themselves over to sexual immorality and strange flesh, are set forth as examples suffering the punishment of eternal fire. The transformation of Lot's wife into a pillar of salt for looking back becomes a powerful symbol of the danger of dwelling on the past at the expense of a continued walk with God, as recalled in Luke 17:32. Remember Lot's wife. Abraham, witnessing this destruction from a distance, contemplates both divine justice and mercy, reflecting the duality of God's character described in Exodus 34:6-7. The Lord is a God gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in love and faithfulness, yet he will not clear the guilty. This judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, coupled with Lot's rescue, illustrates God's balanced justice while emphasizing the importance of faithful intercession, as Abraham had demonstrated in Genesis 18:23-32. God's punishment and Lot's deliverance also recall Hebrews 10:31. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. However, Lot, afraid to remain in Zoar despite his preservation, eventually takes refuge in a cave with his daughters. This choice marks a return to a state of fear and isolation, far removed from the urban life he had once embraced. His escape to the mountains illustrates Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. However, the events that unfold in this cave expose the deep scars left by Sodom's corruption. Lot's daughters, desperate to preserve their lineage after the destruction of their fiancés, plot to get their father drunk and have relations with him. This incestuous act, while shocking, reflects the lasting impact of Sodom's morally degraded environment on their thinking. Their sons, Moab and Ben-Ammi, would become the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, Israel's historic enemies. The meanings of their names, Moab, from the father, and Ben-Ammi, son of my people, recall the disputed origins of these peoples. This account highlights the long-term consequences of immoral choices, while serving as a stern warning against depravity. The incident of Lot's daughters shows that even after leaving Sodom, its pernicious influence persisted. Lot, although a righteous man according to 2 Peter 2:7-8, was continually tormented by the surrounding corruption. This moral dilemma underscores the challenges of maintaining righteous living in a corrupt environment. As James 4:4 reminds us, whoever desires to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Lot's initial decision to choose the Jordan Plain for its material wealth, Genesis 13:10-11, reflects the human temptation to value earthly possessions over spiritual values. This fateful choice epitomizes the constant struggle between material desires and the call to righteous living, a challenge that humanity continues to face. This story, while chronicling the tragic consequences of sin, also recalls the call to flee earthly passions and pursue righteousness and faith, as 2 Timothy 2:22 exhorts, "Flee youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace." The story of Lot and his family is a timeless warning about the dangers of being influenced by a corrupt environment. Although Lot tried to maintain his integrity and remain true to his values, the scars left by Sodom were deep. This story illustrates the spiritual struggle to remain faithful to God in a world of moral decline, a call to all of us to choose the narrow path, guided by faith, righteousness, and justice. The arrival of the angels in Sodom marks a significant turning point in the story, revealing Lot's contradictions and the tensions between his moral values and the corrupting influences of his environment. Despite his good intentions, Lot finds himself torn, illustrating Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. His willingness to protect his hosts by sacrificing his own daughters speaks to the moral complexity of his choices, but also to the devastating impact of Sodom on his family. This poignant scene exposes the challenges of maintaining one's integrity in an environment steeped in corruption. The story of Lot and his daughters after their escape to the cave illuminates a troubling truth. Leaving a place of sin does not guarantee freedom from its influence. The actions of Lot's daughters perpetuate the sins of Sodom, illustrating how environment and personal choices shape character and influence future generations. This passage recalls 1 John 2:15-17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. And the story warns Israel and contemporary readers of the consequences of aligning themselves with wickedness and corrupt worldly systems destined for divine destruction. In speaking of Lot's wife and the destruction of Sodom, Jesus emphasizes the urgency of abandoning worldly attachments in pursuit of eternal salvation. Luke 17:32-33 resonates with this call. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will find it. Jesus' statement in Matthew 11:23 that Sodom would have repented if it had seen his miracles underscores the heightened responsibility of those who reject light when it is revealed to them. God, in his judgment, takes into account the knowledge and opportunities available to each individual, thus heightening the consequences for those who willfully ignore his grace. Throughout this story, the themes of divine justice, mercy, and human responsibility intertwine to offer timeless lessons. Lot's life, though imperfect, shows how difficult it is to live righteously in a fallen world. His struggles and mistakes serve as a warning against loving worldly systems and a reminder of the call to a God-centered life. Are you looking for a fulfilling and prosperous life in every way? Discover how biblical teachings can transform your view of prosperity and abundance. Prosperity with God is a practical and inspiring guide that shows you how to strengthen your faith, manage your finances according to divine principles, and achieve true satisfaction. Dive into this journey of prosperity aligned with the will of the Creator, and discover the path to a life of spiritual and material abundance. Click the link in the comments to access this precious teaching. Prepare yourself for a transformative read and to discover the true meaning of prosperity. Don't miss this opportunity.